I'm the chapter director, Joshua Arma, and I'm super excited to have with us today Jason Towns, managing director for Techstars. How you doing today, Jason?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Glad to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for those of us who are just joining, you know, a community which happens to be the world's largest community of startup entrepreneurs. There's about 2 million plus entrepreneurs, and Startup Grind is in over 200 cities. And Atlantic City is a new chapter that we launched recently to help bring change to the local economy and also to launch Atlantic City's startup ecosystem. And with
Mhm.
that being said, we are now transitioning into a new year where COVID is still an issue, but
Mhm.
we have some solutions that can be viable. And I think one of them is our topic of tonight, which is why startup accelerators matter. So,
Mhm.
real quick, Jason, can you please share a little bit about your background with us, and how you got into this space of working with the accelerators and being an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. So let's see. Long story. I'll try to make it short. And I again appreciate the invite. I respect the grind, and building up a new ecosystem is not an easy thing to do, but I think it pays off for everyone involved. So definitely kudos to you and your team for really picking up the mantle and taking it there. So for me, let's see, the short version, I've been in the tech industry for my entire career. This 2020, I think, marks my 20th year in the tech industry. Started my career in the telecom space, in the sales and strategic business development role. Launched my first company shortly thereafter. It was actually the telecom bubble bursting that led to the launch of our first startup. So built out one of the first B2B platforms focused on telecom procurement way back in the day, and learned a bunch of things, made a bunch of mistakes. Learned a lot, and really a few things that I took from that experience early on. uh, there are a few different things that absolutely impact the way that a founder navigates the startup and investment ecosystem. One of those being geography, one of those just being culture and your connectedness or lack thereof, and then another one of those things being gender as well. I think there are a number of factors that play a role, and so early on I recognized that, and I realized that if I ever made it, through this ecosystem and got to a place where I had enough access and had enough of a visibility, I really wanted to turn back around and start to leverage that to open the doors for others. And so, for the latter part of my career, that's basically what I've been doing, which is really spending my time opening the door, or doing whatever I can to open the door for others. And so, it's been an interesting journey. So just to fast forward, so after the first startup, spent a bunch of time supporting others. We had a decent exit, spent some time investing in companies, advising companies, and just trying to get my hands, sort of roll my sleeves up and be supportive where I could. And over time, just really recognized that one of the things that I happen to be really good at is, picking really early stage entrepreneurs, supporting them early on, and then getting the founder connected to the right type of capital, the right type of investor at the right time. And so by doing that, realized that there's value in that, and that I could open doors and make sure that there are pipelines to capital that were being built. Um, Fast forward to where I am today. So I've been doing that in a number of capacities. I have worked with organizations like Code 2040 and Google under the GV Google Ventures banner. built programs for a number of others. I've done some of the work under my own platform, and more recently come on board to lead some of the efforts at Techstars. And so two things here. On one side, I lead the Techstars Future of Longevity Accelerator, which is a startup accelerator really focused on supporting innovation that's being built to support the needs of older adults and caregivers as well. And also, while at Techstars, which for any of you who don't know, Techstars we like to call the global network that supports entrepreneurs. Uh, Under the Techstars banner, we run accelerators. There's some venture funds. It's really focused on supporting early stage innovation. And so, one of the things outside of the accelerator that I'm excited to be working on is really working within the organization to help to continue creating those pipelines to entrepreneurs in communities all around the globe, and doing some interesting stuff. We'll be announcing probably in 2021, but really just working alongside the leadership team to make sure that we're building in a way that supports the future. And I'm excited about what that looks like, and excited to be here today.
When I see we have a couple questions, one from David Stengel, which will in a few. Just want to get through this a little bit more. So no, thank you very much for sharing that with us. And you're very humble. You have some awards that you won, like you were on the Roots list of the 100 most influential African Americans. You know, you were top 40 in the 40. Most recently, Ebony Magazine's Power 100 list. I mean, for some people, accolades are meaningless. It's important from a diversity perspective that your work has been recognized. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you and how others can, kind of replicate that effort that you made?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. So a few things. I think for me, I wouldn't say that awards are meaningless. I think that I think it's really important to celebrate the wins and to celebrate the work that's being put in. But for me, the thing that's most important for me is the work and the output that leads to the awards and the accolades. That's really what drives me. It's the outcomes. And so, I guess to answer that question, it's I had the blessing and the privilege to figure out what I'm really passionate about relatively early in my career, and I realized that is not the same for everyone. But as I mentioned before, after running that first company and navigating towards an exit and realizing that the things that we had to go through to get there, it made me really clear on a few things around what I wanted to do with the rest of my career. Again, given the opportunity and given the access, I knew that I wanted to leverage everything that I have and everything that I could do to open the doors for others, to make sure that, look, entrepreneurship is going to be hard as hell no matter what. But if there's a way to open some doors or to smooth the path out just a little bit, to make sure that we are truly building an inclusive entrepreneurship ecosystem that recognizes and supports the innovation and the ideas of all across the board, I just think it's a better thing for all of us. And so for me, I guess to answer your question, it's just really figuring out what you're really passionate about, what you would really like, what problem would you run at, even if there weren't a dollar value attached to it, and whatever that thing is, that's probably the thing that you could probably push to a place where maybe one day you'd see the fruits of your labor. But again, for me, it's the award for me is the founder that gets funded and gets the opportunity to build the company. The award for me is, seeing founders who I had conversations with when they were having a hard time raising their first couple $100,000 or $150,000, now running huge multi-million-dollar companies and hiring really smart people, and just going out and continuing that success. that's the thing that drives me more than anything else. But the awards are cool. I'm pretty humble, but I appreciate everything. But overall, it's what we do for the people. I think that drives me.
Beautiful. No, that's really, really important. I think that really makes a lot of sense, and especially coming from a perspective of you know, impact. So to talk about impact, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about your upbringing and where you're from, and you know how you know how that was for you, like from your child, maybe some of your teenage life?
Absolutely, yeah. So, actually born in Queens, New York. Grew up in yeah, born in Queens. Grew up in between Queens and Brooklyn. My father, my father died when I was really young, and my mother then moved down south to continue her education. She went to Howard Law School. I think at the time felt like, if she were going to have to raise two kids on her own, then she might need to to strengthen her job prospects. And so while doing that, I my brother and I lived with my aunt and uncle in Brooklyn, and so we spent our few of our younger years in Brooklyn, and then eventually moved down south with my mother. And so we moved out right outside of DC in Silver Spring, Maryland. So DC area. Um, High school, pretty typical. I think, I have probably a mischievous, young guy, but for the most part, I tried to keep myself out of trouble. I think I did a pretty good job of that, not completely, but pretty good. And yeah, I think, my interest in entrepreneurship probably started right around there, early high school, probably, you know, freshman, sophomore year, and have sort of cultivated that throughout my life. Went to college, Hampton University, in Virginia. um, upon leaving Hampton, came back to New York and basically spent the next couple of years back and forth between New York and the DC area, exploring a number of opportunities. And again, so two partners and I launched our first company in the DC area. And then from there, it's been the roller coaster ever since. I think that there have been some amazing highs and some really interesting things that have happened that I never would have guessed I would have seen or had the opportunity to see. I've seen some tremendous lows and some really, really tough times, and I've had to navigate through those. But I think what I've realized is that no matter how great things get and no matter how bad things get, you're still gonna, wake up the next day, put one foot on the floor, and get back at it. So eventually, you start to realize that for every amazing day or amazing quarter, amazing year, you're going to get hit with the speed bumps. And for every really tough year or day or month, it's definitely going to get better if you push through it. So started to realize that and try to roll with the punches. But yeah, that's pretty much, me in a nutshell. I think typical black kid, try to stay out of trouble, try to navigate the world and learn some things at the same time. And here I am.
No, it's beautiful. Transition to our topic here, which is I think is very important. There's a pattern that we talk about, which is you use education as a way out or as a way to create a stepping stone for your future. In terms of like even your mother, you mentioned she want to go to Howard Law School. The decision to go through academic institutions is a very consistent thing in a lot of neighborhoods around the world, including urban communities. And I
Mm-hmm.
find that people always think you have to be an entertainer or a musician, or you're going to end up with a service job in industry, whether it be a warehouse worker or manufacturing. But academic knowledge can help you get into startups, and get into business, and get into of innovation, right? Which typically research is where universities thrive, and then implementation is where industry thrives. So
Mm-hmm.
I really want to ask a question to kind of transition into the topic here. what is the value of a startup accelerator?
Yeah. So a few things, and
And
so
then,
for
what is a startup accelerator? There's a two-part question. Sorry.
what's the
What
first
is
part
a
of it?
startup accelerator, and
Oh, got it.
what is a startup accelerator, and what is the value of a startup accelerator?
Yeah. So for the first part of that, what is a startup accelerator? Basically, a startup accelerator is a time-bound program that's set up to support usually an early stage entrepreneur through some of the initial parts of building and growing the company, and the role or the goal there is to accelerate, to leverage the network and other strategic opportunities that are created to accelerate the growth of that particular company and to accelerate the success of that particular founder or founding team. And so at Techstars, and it can look differently depending on the organization and who's running the accelerator. But at Techstars, we have a relatively tried and true model. It's a 13-week program where we select 10 companies per accelerator. And so these accelerators are either vertical focused, meaning they're supporting a specific industry, or they're city focused and in specific cities around the world and supporting entrepreneurship in those cities. And so that's what an accelerator is. To expand a little bit further around that, so some of the things that a company would receive other than funding while participating in an accelerator would be access to subject matter experts in your field, access to mentors. Joshua, you were just a mentor in our first Future of Longevity Accelerator and have been really impactful to some of our companies. And so things like that, for us, we had roughly 90 or so mentors working with our founders over the course of the accelerator, and then it all culminates in what we call a demo day. And at demo day, that's the end of the program, and that's our big event for each company to really showcase what they've been up to, what they've been working on, and to really present a refined version of what they're building to the general public, but more specifically to the investor public, because a big part of demo day is getting the opportunity to pitch to investors and create some of those conversations that may go on to lead to investment rounds. And so that's an accelerator in a nutshell. And to answer your question around why is an accelerator important, I think if you ask 10 people, you would get 10 answers there. But I would say, for what I believe, I think that the accelerator is important because it creates the opportunity for founders to connect to the resources needed to build a world-class company. And so, look, my first company, I wish I had a Techstars. I wish I had the opportunity to go through a program that paired me with specific mentors that fit the stage and the industry that I was in. Wish I had people to talk through investment with and to talk through how to build out the MVP in a way that's going to give us enough data to then build out the broader product. There's so many questions that you have that usually you will just bang your head against the wall or make enough mistakes to figure it out. I think the importance of the accelerator is to help founders leverage the mistakes of others and to leverage the insight of others who have been there before, to eliminate some of that, which cuts out costs, cuts out time, allows you to get to your end goal faster. Just ends up being a really efficient way to navigate the early stage, the most dangerous part of getting a business to scale.
I see. No, that's very powerful. I think that's very, very important. So to move forward with the next question,
Mhm.
how can diversity, equity, and inclusion be increased through startup accelerators?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that a few things. So one, you have, I think there, you have a handful of accelerators that are focusing very specifically on solving for that. And so you have um, organizations like the like Div Inc. in Austin, or 1863 in DC. You've got let's see, what else. I'm trying to think of a few of the others. You've got the Hillman Accelerator. You've got Founder Gym. There are a number of programs that are set up really to support the thesis that you just sort of touched on, which is around the fact that we need better and broader representation in the innovation ecosystem. But also, I think that also the larger accelerators also, I believe, have a really specific reason to also do a much better job of making sure that we're reaching the broadest casting the widest net for talent, right? I think that the greatest ideas and the greatest innovation are probably locked in the minds of those who the innovation ecosystem isn't even touching for the most part. And so I think that there's a need and also an opportunity to just do a better job of making sure that we're reaching into communities that typically aren't necessarily getting the look. That's why I'm really excited about what you're doing and the work that you're up to. I think at Techstars, we're spending a lot of time building out the capacity to continue seeing really great companies across the board, seeing really great founders across the board. I'm spending a good amount of time along with a group of others and our executive leadership team, just making sure that we're building out the capacity to be able to do that at scale. And look, we need, to your point, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Bottom line is we just need more voices, more minds to play a role in this. If we're going to solve the problems of tomorrow, we've got to do a better job of unlocking the minds and the ideas within the minds of the people today. So it's really simple. The way that things are moving right now, those who are doing the best job at really helping to cultivate the entrepreneurial um, hunger within those in communities that are sort of being left out are probably going to reap the rewards. There's some amazing, amazing, amazing founders that just don't necessarily get the look, and so those who are doing a better job at finding, at sourcing, at supporting those founders, it's simple business. Outside of just being the right thing to do, outside of being the strongest move to make, it just makes good business sense.
No, that's really, really important. I'm glad you touched on that. And then for those of us here that may be new to the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to startups, is the notion that less than 1% of venture capital goes to founders and people of color, and even less than that, women. So for a long time, it's been mainly white, Caucasian males and Asian males that have dominated most of the tech that we use today. One of the issues that this has created is, biased technology that benefits only
Mhm.
graphics. And we
Mhm.
see this one use case that was Ring, that was acquired by Amazon. Ring had
Mhm.
a lot of data sets with their artificial intelligence, but it didn't necessarily identify different people of color. And this
Mhm.
so that is just widely known with artificial intelligence that there's a lot of ethical issues right now with the data sets that they're using to train. the AI on. And collectively, startup founders are very, very, tenacious in solving a problem. Sometimes they forget that they could exclude certain demographics from their innovation, right?
Right.
So that was related to. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So for the next question, this is a little bit more about Atlantic City, but also just in general.
Mhm.
When does it make sense for a city or a town to pursue a startup ecosystem? When do you think that is?
I mean, the realest answer I could give you is now. That's just it. I mean, we're at a really interesting time right now where, look, COVID, I feel like has, in a lot of ways just knocked all the pieces off the chessboard, right? Like everything is sort of all over the place right now. Millions of folks are out of work. The economy is in a place that's we're looking at things day by day and don't know exactly what tomorrow holds. The economy of tomorrow is not going to look like the economy of yesterday. We are in a moment right now that we'll look back on, and they'll probably have history classes in colleges across the country on 2020 and how this year shifted a lot of things. And so when you talk about when is the right time to cultivate a startup ecosystem, well, to me, the startup ecosystem is probably going to be the biggest opportunity to bring more people into the fold, to bring more really smart brains into the mix, into the equation. And so the time for that is right now. Also, again, given COVID and some of our lockdown restrictions, that means that more than ever, more jobs than ever are completely remote. And so being able to cultivate the ecosystem and also to work through programs to help those who have interest navigate the ecosystem, get the right training and get the right tools to be able to participate in this ecosystem. There's no time like right now for that to happen. I think it's ridiculously important, especially in cities and regions that have been typically locked out of the mix. This is the opportunity to play a role. Everything changes right now, and so those who are playing an active role in making sure that we're taking advantage of that situation and opening the door for those who may not have had a door open to them in the past. I think that's where the wins are.
And just to kind of break this down, because some people may not be familiar, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I really to also reframe the question, just to kind of give an actual inflection point. When I
Mm-hmm.
say when, uh, I want to give you an example of
Mm-hmm.
a common urban city like Atlantic City and other cities.
Mm-hmm.
Difference, and we know the difference, but for those that don't know, there's a difference between small businesses,
Mm-hmm.
self-employed,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, startup. And would you lightly touch on the difference of like what an actual startup ecosystem is versus like a small business ecosystem? Because a lot of times people economic development is everything in one, and it really, the idea of a startup ecosystem is a very dedicated
Mm-hmm.
initiative, focusing on.
Yeah. Yep. So to dig in there, I think it starts with your definition of what a startup is. And so for the most part, broadly, a startup is a high risk but potential for super high growth company that's set up and built out in a relatively specific way, and there's very specific supports that need to be in place to cultivate the opportunity to take for those to entrepreneurs to take that type of risk. Different from your small business ecosystem, and to Joshua's point, different than just entrepreneurship broadly. The startup space, there's some really specific nuances to that require a certain set of supports to make sure that this is a healthy environment for these types of high risk entrepreneurs to really make a go at it and build out the innovation that they believe should exist in the world. And so for there to be a healthy, when people talk about a healthy startup ecosystem, I think it consists of a few things. But what I usually see in a city or a region that's building out a really healthy ecosystem, it's when a number of the systems that are already in place are working collaboratively in or in conjunction with the with those who are in the startup and investment space. And so, for instance, having the school system and the colleges working alongside the government to support entrepreneurs, or to support youth entrepreneurship, and to support building out the programs that are teaching young people the tenets of startup entrepreneurship. Is the city government or that state government allocating resources through a specific fund or set of funds to invest directly in high risk, early stage entrepreneurs? Are there other marketing um, campaigns that are in place to make sure that entrepreneurs that are outside of your region see this specific region as somewhere where it might be interesting to build a business? What are the things that that marketing campaign can say about this city or state or region that couldn't be said about the city or state next door? These are all things that come into play when you're really trying to make sure that you have a healthy and robust ecosystem. I think a lot of people look at startups as, almost anti the government, sort of the rebels who are just out here making it happen, and sort of creating their own rules. And it's 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 actually the opposite, at least in terms of what I've seen. When you're talking about really building out the ecosystem, the strongest startup communities are those where there's a really healthy relationship between the local government and regulatory bodies and those who are playing a role in cultivating that ecosystem. And so the leaders that are in place, that are supporting startups, that are running the programs, the accelerators and the incubators and the co-working spaces where entrepreneurs are working out of, usually you want to see most of these facets or most of these components be working somewhat collaboratively in support of the entrepreneurs, because everyone really knows that seeing success from the entrepreneur trickles down to everybody else. And if you can get those wins, so much comes out of that. And the long game, when people talk about Silicon Valley and talk about New York and some of the most established startup ecosystems, it's usually where you have enough sustained entrepreneurship activity to where companies have been able to grow to a large enough place where there's some M&A activity, or the company is either getting purchased, acquired by a larger company, or going public, and that creates wealth, and that wealth often then trickles back down into the ecosystem through the employees becoming investors now, and the founders maybe starting other companies or starting venture funds that again go to invest in other earlier entrepreneurs. It creates the right type of environment for there to be sustainable early stage capital that allows for things to continue to grow. So if if the if everyone in the ecosystem at an earlier stage understands that that may be the end game, it makes it easier for everyone to work together in a common in towards a common goal. So what I would what I would say would probably be some of the components of a healthy startup ecosystem. And
Awesome.
yeah, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was going to jump in real quick and share that. So this is what the question of when, because the idea of a time is different when you look at time as a series of steps that cities are taking to
Mm-hmm.
make. Like Toronto did this in terms of making themselves more attractive for foreign corporations to move there and
That's right.
become business. So like for Atlantic City, I'm gonna give you some quick stats on Atlantic City that you may or may not
Mm-hmm.
know. As
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge, there is no co-working spaces in Atlantic City, and there's very, we're searching for the startups in Atlantic City. There's about a handful, but
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the challenges launching startup grind is the concept of what we're doing, right? People think of a startup and they like, are you talking about starting up your car? Like what I mean, like something different. So in terms of getting ahead here, the Atlantic City has a population of, let's say, 37,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
on that number, and the average household income in Atlantic City is $18,000. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and the national average income per household is $28,000. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about, our city is $10,000 less than the national average. Why is all this important? Because last year Atlantic City casinos brought in $3.3 billion from gamblers,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
they just in August, because we had a superstorm Sandy, Atlantic City was awarded $20 million in a
Hmm.
grant. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so Atlantic City with such a small population compared to like a DC, New York, Philly, is
Mm-hmm.
playing with big dollars on that kind of level with
Absolutely.
a small rateable base. Like our
Mm-hmm.
rateable base, 37,000 people is not enough tax revenue to fund everything. So we get a lot of dollars from casinos, the state
Mm-hmm.
government, and other and federal agencies. And
Mm-hmm.
now one of the things that's happened recently in Atlantic City is that the Hard Rock has come into town. They acquired the Trump Taj Mahal, which is an old casino, and they're knocking down Trump Plaza, which is the first thing you see when you came to Atlantic City, near the Atlantic City
Mm-hmm.
Convention Center and at Boardwalk Hall. Why is this all relevant? Because through this transformation of creating a more family-style resort, you
Mm-hmm.
have locals that want to take advantage of innovation. So with the tourism side of Atlantic City, about 27 million people visit Atlantic City every year. It's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. That's
Mm-hmm.
bigger than Hawaii and some
Mm-hmm.
other. You know, from a tri-state perspective, there's a lot of interstate travel to Atlantic City for gambling and vacation, and people locally have looked at ways in which how do we take advantage of things outside of tourism. So
Mm-hmm.
recently, Atlantic City, through a gentleman by the name of James Whitehead, was awarded Envision Center through Dr. Ben Carson. So now we have one of the key Envision centers around the country that HUD supports, and we're now trying to diversify the workforce, which is its own initiative. It
Mm-hmm.
requires so much bandwidth just to upskill people that it could overshadow the idea of a startup ecosystem until that happens, right? People are
Sure.
more probably interested in Microsoft coming to town than launching local startups, for
Sure.
example. So
Yeah.
I'm saying all this to say that two unique things that happened recently is $150 million project happened not too long ago, and it was
Mm-hmm.
through Stockton University, which is a top 10 regional school and public
Mm-hmm.
university, and they built their first beach campus. This is like the only beach campus on the East Coast, okay,
Hmm.
in the city, and they
Mm-hmm.
have a huge endowment and a large student base. And South Jersey Natural Gas moved their
Mm-hmm.
headquarters to the city as well. So you have two
Yeah.
areas, education, and even natural resources such as the ocean that could be
Mm-hmm.
good verticals for us to start with. So what kind of verticals do you think Atlantic City and the cities down coastal could do to cure? Because typically the hardest thing in starting an ecosystem is what to focus on. What type of
Yeah.
companies? Like when you think about fintech, you might go to New York. When you think about consumer startups, you might go to Silicon Valley. When you think about
Mm-hmm.
supply chain, you might go to Atlanta. So
Mm-hmm.
typically, most cities need a vertical that reflects
Mm-hmm.
their industry. And for Atlantic City, has been for the longest tourism, and now we're starting to migrate into energy
Sure.
and other asset. Other industry types that are not typical.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you touched on a few of them. So, being a coastal city, I think about sustainable energy. I think about, anything related to, the way that we leverage the water and the way that we protect our oceans, but also to the point around tourism. I don't know if I would move so quickly away from that either. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for innovation right there, and I think this is where Atlantic City has built the brand around, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity there. But you know, from my perspective, there's plenty of opportunity for there to be that vertical focus, but I also think that there's also plenty of opportunity to take a broad approach as well and just really support early stage entrepreneurship broadly. And then as you get that groundswell, you start to realize where you're seeing those pockets of innovation and letting them just come to you organically. I think you probably would get some sort of energy around energy and sustainability. I think again around tourism, but I would say there's a opportunity there to just lay the conditions for you to learn more about where the natural affinity for folks is, sort of where the connections are being made, and you would see that in a probably a short amount of time.
No, definitely agree with that, especially since online gambling has been approved. It's been a huge way for
That's
casinos to stay relevant, and there's a lot of opportunities in online gaming and online gambling. And James Whitehead, the gentleman I
right.
mentioned with the Envision Center, he recently been as a focus to create the first cybersecurity triangle in America in Atlantic City. And that's actually something that is being worked on right now, is bringing cybersecurity jobs to Atlantic City. And we had him here on Startup Ground. And one of the things we mentioned was, also to build cybersecurity startups or cyber intelligence stuff that can relate to that. So my last question, until we move to the audience and let them ask some questions, starting with David did ask a question first. My last main question for you in regards to our chat today is, what makes Atlantic, or not Atlantic City, I will say Atlantic City too, but what makes a city or a town attractive for startup accelerators? That's a bigger question, because that's really about bringing and attracting like a Techstars to the city, or Founder Institute, or other local initiatives that may be happening.
So, a few things. I think there are different. I think there's some different nuances, given the accelerator that we're talking about, whether it's Founder Institute, or whether you're talking about Techstars or others. And there are also a number of regional players that are doing some really interesting work. But I think that for when we're talking about Techstars, it's identifying who is the partner or the consortium of companies or organizations that really want to make this happen, and that are going to do everything in their power to see it through. Techstars does a really good job of coming in as a partner to the company or companies that want to see this accelerator happen, and really putting some of the back end pieces in place to make sure that it works. So I would say the big piece that to think about is who or what company or what organization is going to represent that anchor partner who's going to see it through and really take a leadership role in building the capacity alongside a Techstars. I think that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where a lot of I think that's where a lot of the programs are born out of either a specific vertical or a specific partner that really wants to make this happen, and they do a lot of the legwork and pulling it together. And Techstars does a great job of helping to support the next steps, laying that all out so that there's a clear path to getting this program off the ground. So I think that's the first step to making that happen.
Awesome. No, thank you very much for that. I think that's very unique, and we appreciate you answering that question. So now we're going to turn over to the audience. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. To start with David's question, he asked specifically as it relates to your program, can you talk about the relationship with Pivotal Ventures and Techstars in that capacity?
Sure. So Pivotal Ventures is our, as I just talked about the partners piece, Pivotal Ventures is our partner in the Techstars Future of Longevity Accelerator. And so, they've worked with us, sort of co-created this program and this accelerator. We've worked really closely with them. They brought some of the partners that we've worked with throughout the program, some of the mentors that we have leveraged over the course of the last several months come from the Pivotal Network. And then as we led to Demo Day, as I mentioned, at that culminating activity in the end, they've also played a role in inviting investors and really supporting the companies getting connected to the type of capital that'll help sustain them and move forward. So Pivotal is really the partner supporting Techstars here in running the accelerator. And why? Because Pivotal Ventures has a real thesis around caregiving and the impact of caregiving as we move into the future, specifically as it pertains to how it impacts older adults. And so this program and this accelerator is their way of playing a real role in supporting early stage innovation in a space that is in dire need of innovation. And again, we launched our application process right. I came on board and joined the team right about the week that COVID really started to hit pretty hard. So no one, expected that this was going to be what it was. But looking back, I don't think I could have been, running a more important program or supporting, supporting a more important group of founders through this crisis that has just shown us where so many of the gaps are in our U.S. healthcare system, and many of those gaps being the way that our oldest or most vulnerable citizens are navigating all of this. So I'm excited about it. They've been really great, and we're opening up our applications for our second accelerator February 22nd, I believe.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I would say anyone can apply, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And just before going to the next question, just want to throw this out there. Since everything has been remote, accelerators like Techstars are typically physical, in-person event, curated experiences. Where now things are remote, offering global access to anyone that wants to be a part of them. So I think that's pretty unique that you've been able to do a remote accelerator and still give the same high value that Techstars has built over the years. So Dominic has a question, and his question is, Jason, as an early stage founder who's struggling to raise their first round of funding, how can I make myself and my company more attractive to investors? What are they looking for right now during the pandemic?
That's a good question. So I think a few things that you can do as an early stage founder, struggling to figure out capital. One, I will say that it's hard, and that's that's probably not the answer that you want to hear, but that's just the first answer, is that it's hard. It was hard before the pandemic, and raising money is harder right now for everybody across the board. On average, you'll probably pitch close to 100 investors before you're able to raise the type of capital that you would typically want to raise for a really early fundraising round. It's a ugly grind to the capital, but there are a few things that you can do that I think would make the journey a little bit smoother for you. Number one would be, find some of the investors that are in your network now. Even if you don't have them, use LinkedIn and connect to people. Feel free to connect to me and reach out and say, hey, I'm Dominic from the event. Connect to investors that you don't plan on immediately pitching, right? So maybe you have your list of investors who you really want to see if you can get yourself in front of. Start another list of investors who you don't plan on pitching, but you really want to get some really sound advice from. You want to leverage them and push your pitch to them to see what's working, what's not working. And if you're bringing it from that perspective and not expecting a check to be, written directly from that particular person, they're going to be more likely to sort of walk you through what resonates with them, what's not resonating with them, what you should and shouldn't say, what you may want to include in your pitch deck, what you may not. you'll get the type of insight that will help you hone your pitch, and that way you'll be better off for when you do pitch the investors that you're actually going to be going after. The other thing is, there are a number of just really early stage accelerators and other programs that are focused, some with a diversity focus, some focus on supporting, Black founders, some focus on women founders. There are all types of programs. If there's something that's available to you in your market or right now anywhere, because everything is basically remote, I mean, obviously my opinion is biased because I'm at Techstars, right? But I'm a big supporter of leveraging these programs to get the support that you need early on, so that by the time you come out of said program, you've nailed down some of the things that may be stumbling blocks to you right now. It might be the smallest thing that's happening in your conversation with investors that's stopping them from maybe taking you seriously. And it's such a nuanced conversation and dance. It's honestly, sometimes I feel like it's so stupid that it has to exist like this, but you could say the one or two wrong things and that person may write you off because you may have signaled to them that you don't know what it's going to take to build this business, when that could be completely wrong. You could be the strongest entrepreneur they've ever met, but just saying something or one of your slides looking a certain way could totally turn an investor off. And I wish the world wasn't like that, but it is like that. And so how do we navigate around that? And so again, my suggestion would be have a small group of people who you're willing to get that real solid advice from, that sound advice from. And the second thing would be do some research and try to figure out what programs might make sense for you to get into, to get that support and to build that network so that by the time you come out of there, you're on point. I mean, the other thing that Accelerator does that maybe I didn't touch on before is it gives you such a strong network. So if you are coming out of a city or don't necessarily have a lot of connections to investors and mentors and any of that, you go through one of these programs and you will come out at the very least with a solid network that you can reach out to and get support from. And hopefully, when you're successful and made all the money in the world, you'll turn around and do the same thing for somebody else that's in your shoes, the shoes that you're in today. But those are the things that are top of mind for me.
Yeah, and real quick, to touch on this, a shameless plug, even though maybe I should make them a sponsor or reach out to them for that, is that Founder Suite. Founder Suite has a CRM for startup founders to use to raise money, and you literally use it as your CRM in terms of managing your relationship and your pipeline for your startup funding cycles from seed to Series A to Series B. And they have a database of 50,000 investors that include their contact information, and you can strategically use that to do some research on people and to learn about the right pockets to fit. And then the follow-up thing I just want to share real quick is venture capitalists do not invest their own money. So if you're talking to a venture capitalist versus the angel investors are coming out of pocket. So typically for your first round, angel investors are the best people to talk to because they're going to believe in you. They're investing because they know who you are. And that's, getting a few people to cut a $10,000 to $50,000 check. And, you do that a few times, you'll have like $500,000, $250,000 in your bank account from raising capital. And even though this isn't investment advice, venture capitalists manage money for limited partners. And not to get too deeply in that, you just have to know that they're a conduit of resources. So they're looking to help their investors make more money off of a larger fund. So they typically manage a fund versus their own bank account. And that's something to keep in mind if you're pitching VCs versus angel investors. And then the last thing I want to plug here is that customers are the best investors for first-time companies, because when you position a startup to have traction with customers, investors are like betting on horses. That's their mindset. They're just trying to bet on the best thing that they think is going to make them a lot of money. Whereas you as a founder, you want validation from customers, because you'll be surprised that big customers can also turn into investors. There's been a number of times that large enterprise companies, you secure them as a customer or get a pilot with them, they also will come and invest in your startup. And they also acquire startups. One of the biggest sources of liquidity events or exits from a startup is acquisitions from big corporations. That's why there's a lot of focus on enterprise software or software as a service and different things like that. I just want to throw that out there. So to move on to the next question, which I think is the final one, and then we'll wrap up, is
Sure.
how does your accelerator help companies after graduation and in the longer term? This is from Diana. So that's her question.
That's a great question. Actually, I've been in that conversation over this last week and a half, I guess. So a few things with Techstars, and again, every organization, handles this piece differently. But for Techstars, the motto at the organization is Techstars for life, meaning that once you participate and become an alum of Techstars, meaning you've gone through one of the Techstars accelerators, you now have access to Techstars, the network, and all of the resources within that umbrella for life, whether it's at this startup, whether you sell this startup and start your next one, whether this doesn't work out, you go back, work for 5 years, and then come back out and start something else. You have access to the Techstars network for as long as Techstars is around, you have access to that network. So that means that that's the mentor network, that's the managing directors and others, the investors and the investor team in our network. So there's a tremendous amount of resources that all fall under the Techstars banner. And my role as managing director of this program is to help my 10 companies recognize how to plug into the network and where to plug into the network. So for the last couple of months, we've been, heads down, just working, grinding day in, day out, supporting the companies and getting to demo day, which was a really great event. In fact, I'll post a link to the videos. You can watch the pitches and all of that. But beyond that, it's really going to be about making the connections to others in the network, whether that's mentors, whether that's some of the other Techstars corporate partners, making those connections to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to support our portfolio companies. And also Techstars as a venture fund also invests in companies that have come out of Techstars accelerators. So the accelerator ends up being an opportunity for the venture fund to find the right companies to invest in moving things forward. So those are the main ways that we stay engaged. But it's an opportunity to stick around for as long as you want or need to. It's open to every founder.
Thank you very much. Well, with that being said, I'll let you share any final thoughts with our audience and post that
Oh
link
yeah,
that you
here
talked about. Feel free to
I'll
share
post a
any
link right here.
as well.
There you go. Yeah, I think I appreciate the opportunity to come and share today. I think that the opportunity to really engage in this innovation ecosystem is more real today than it ever has been. This has been a rough year on everybody. I think I don't think I just speak for myself here, but this has been a rough one. But what this does, I believe, is opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity. And so for those of us who are in position, if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, then part of what we should be doing is making sure that we're opening up the doors for others as well. So continue doing what you're doing, man. For everybody who's on the line right now, continue doing what you're doing. Continue pushing things forward. Put pressure on the leaders in your cities, in your region. Put pressure on people because there's great responsibility that comes with that spot. So as long as we're applying pressure, I think things move in the right way. And I'm telling that self to myself as well. So I don't put myself out of that mix. But yeah, I appreciate it. I really thank you.
No, no, we appreciate having you, and I hope that once we transition to physical events, we can invite you back to speak again, maybe for our annual conference. But more importantly, also go to the beach
Okay,
bar in Atlantic City and have a
down. I'm
drink. You know what I'm saying?
I'm
Talk about
all
startups
for
and
it. Let me
whatnot.
know when. I'll drive down and we'll make it happen.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for your participation today, Jason, and for our audience. And we really, really appreciate everyone being here. And we'll see you next time,
Appreciate it.
next year.
Take care,
Thanks
everybody.
for everything.